introduction of UDO, ERASMUS, the man I would say is visionary because he saw the oils before anybody else saw it. That's, his brand is, the idea behind that, now everybody talks about seed oils and the imbalance in the animals that we feed grass and the omega-3, 6, 9 balance of the diet and taking this fish oil and that, other remedy for it. Udo saw it and, just in the research in what he was seeing. So that brand, whether you know it or not, it changed the industry as far as oils go. Welcome to the show, Udo.
Yeah, thank you. I know a lot more about oils than I know about pine pollen. But I am sure I will learn at least as much. I will learn at least as much here than what you're going to learn. At least.
We titled today's conversation, The Traditional Medicine of the Pine Tree, because Udo is fascinated with the history of the pine needles, how it was used in indigenous culture, and he is a big fan of our Evergreen C Tincture. So Udo, how about you tell us about how you came to use pine pollen or Canadian pine pollen products and why you love Evergreen C so much?
Well, I met Saeid at a show, at one of the shows, and I was looking around, see what's new, and it was actually the most interesting thing that was at that show for me, that I didn't know about. And so we just started talking about that. And I grew up in the woods. We ate pine needles, spruce needles. We didn't eat hemlock. We didn't eat cedar. So there are certain things you get to eat and certain things you don't get to eat. And I know that when Jacques Cartier first came to Canada, and I think he's up on the East Coast, they all had scurvy. And the sailors the reason why Britannica ruled the waves, you know that saying, Britannica rules the wave, or the sun never sets on the British Empire? Why did they build such a big empire? Was because way back, a guy by the name of Lind in UK found out that vitamin C prevents scurvy or reverses scurvy. And it took 100 years before the sailors in the British Army started taking limes on their ocean voyages. And that's, by the way, why the UK citizens are often called limeys, because they took limes on their ocean voyages. And they weren't the best warriors. But what happened is that most people, when they went on these long voyages, pork, pickled pork was their food. Well, there's no vitamin C in pickled pork. So they would go on these long voyages and they'd all die of scurvy. And when the British would come and want to do fights with some of these boats, they would get close to the boat and everybody was already dead because they died from scurvy. And the British survived because they had limes on their voyages that gave them the vitamin C they needed to out-survive everybody. So that's how. So
I got a question I got to tell you before you get carried too far. Way before great-great-grandpa told me it was sauerkraut they brought on the seas. Did you ever hear anything about that? Because sauerkraut's high in vitamin C?
Well, sauerkraut, cabbage, all green vegetables have vitamin C.
Okay.
The British used limes. Cabbage has vitamin C. Sauerkraut will have some vitamin C. But bringing it back to pine, when Jacques Cartier landed in Newfoundland, I think, they had scurvy. And the indigenous people cured them by giving them pine needles or giving them evergreen needles. So there's a history of that. And I find that fascinating, like the idea that, you know, if the Dutch had come up with the idea of limes on the voyages, then the Dutch Empire would have been the size of the British Empire. And it was just like a nutritional molecule that made the difference.
Yeah,
Right?
and in fact, if the French had that, or if the Spaniards or anybody had that knowledge
Yeah.
of the indigenous, they would have survived their long voyages before Lind and his discovery of vitamin C. It's I was reading Udo, a research about this very particular thing. It was titled the Tree of Life, vitamin C or scurvy. Vitamin C is scurvy and the role of arginine, L-arginine. You know, one thing it was pointing out was you only need 6 milligrams of vitamin C to recover from 6 milligrams, 6 milligrams of vitamin C to recover from scurvy. So what we said in RDA, and it's 120 and whatnot, it's ascorbic acid and whatnot, it's way above that. But 6 milligrams to recover, we know it's an antioxidant. It was also pointing out that in pine needles, there is arginine as one of the amino acids. And that arginine is facilitating a faster recovery because of its impact in cardiovascular system.
Right.
Postulating on that, which I found interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't know there was arginine in pine needles, but I do know arginine is good for the cardiovascular system. How cool is that? Anyway, we talked about it. I found it really interesting. I find it fascinating. It had never occurred to me that you could do something with pine pollen, you know, and or make tinctures out of needles.
Yeah.
But we used to eat the needles sometimes. We didn't know what was in them, but what we do know is that if it's edible and it comes from nature, it's probably good for you. So that's about where it started. And then I got the tincture, what's it called? You know, I just do the drops.
Yeah, pine needle and spruce tincture, the Evergreen.
Yeah, the Evergreen C. Yeah, and I love the taste of it. It tastes so fresh. It's almost like, you know, I'm getting poetic here instead of scientific, but it's kind of like it gets you close to the woods. It just feels like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I've been taking it. I take it every day. I don't have any health problems, so I can't say, oh, it did this for me or did that for me. But I'm not going to have any health problems, so I'm kind of like at the front end of it, and it's part of what I do. The pollen tincture I really like too. I know it has androgens in it. When you're 82 like I am, then androgens can be you can only be helpful. Let's put it that way. And then I've also taken the dried needles.
Yep.
And then I've, let's see, what else do I have? Oh yeah, the pollen, ponderosa pollen and lodgepole pollen. And pollen has a great reputation for being healthy. I know there's flower pollens, and then there's bee pollens, and then now there's pine pollen. And I think I just thought the idea of using something that is so endemic and that's everywhere in nature, and making that accessible to people who live in the city who don't have access to it. It's just like, yeah, that's the, you know, if I was starting my business, I'd want to do something like that. You know.
Well, you're welcome to come out with us every summer.
I would love to do it, just to, if nothing else, just to have done it. You know, I've done just about every blue collar job.
To be frank with you, I started it with that goal of being out in nature, and I end up most of my time on computer pushing papers for different, you know.
The best laid, how does that go? The best laid plans of mice and men.
Yes.
That's pretty funny, actually. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I just really like it. I mean, I don't know all the science of it and all of that, but I just really like the idea. It just makes so much sense to me. That's
Absolutely.
and you know, my thing that when I look at at health, when I do my work, you know, I don't the research. I do the research. But it's secondary for me. I always start by saying, okay, well, how was it in nature before we got civilized? And then, well, and then I start looking at that. And then how do we get ourselves living in the city to be as closely aligned to how it was in nature as we can? And so this is kind of like completely fits into that philosophy.
Absolutely. Last time we were face to face and we were talking, you were sharing. I'm definitely gonna get to the oils and ask you like a couple of questions about oils because I want you to like.
All right, I'll brace myself.
Yes, but before that, last time you were having a face to face conversation, you were talking about something that's more close to your heart than supplements and nutrition. You want to give us a little bit of a standing that you gave me, and that's in that alignment. There's something that's more passionate for you right now.
You think I remember what I said way back when? So I'll have to make it up from scratch. No, what I'm doing now is I got started by getting poisoned by pesticides, and that really got me focused because the doctors couldn't do anything for me. And then I got into nutrition because the body's made out of food, and the body turns over 98% of the atoms in your body turn over every year. You know, if you drink the amount of water you're supposed to drink, you will drink 10 times your weight in water every year. So everything in your body is always turning over. And so the idea is that if something goes wrong in your body, you raise your standard. And if you raise your standard, then in 1 year, you will have rebuilt 98% of your body to a higher standard. That's what healing is. That's why it can happen, because it's always turning over. So I got into that, and then I was looking at minerals and vitamins and amino acids, fatty acids. The fats got my attention because it was really confusing. On the one hand, I read a study, it says omega-6 is an essential nutrient that you can't make but have to have and die if you don't get enough of. And the next study I read says omega-3 gives you cancer and kills you. And my head exploded. It's like, wait, I have to have it so it can kill me? It's like, you know, and so that got me looking deeper and realizing, and I've realized that the damage that was being blamed on fats or oils should be blamed on the damage done by the processing when they're being made by industry, or should be blamed on what we do to oils when we fry our foods in them, because we do enormous damage to those. Yeah. So then I got that done, and I've spent a lot of time on it. And then I got into, well, what's next? What's the next worst thing? Oils are the most neglected area. More health problems come from damaged oils than any other part of nutrition. What's the next thing that hasn't been addressed? Oh, digestion. Everybody's got, either you're farting or you're belching, or you got pain in your stomach, or you feel bloated, or you got acid reflux, or there's always something going on. So I started looking at that and basically ended up with digestive enzymes, probiotics, fiber, and bitters. Those are about the 4 best medicines that deal with most things in nutrition. Then I said, well, what's next? So I said, okay, greens. So we made dry greens that people can take when they travel to make it a little easier. And then I said, okay, well, what else affects health? And the conclusion I came to, everything affects health. Everything affects health. So then I got into, well, then what does total health look like if everything affects health? Well, total health has to be based in nature and human nature. And I created a scheme that is So you have to deal with internal awareness, which is the core of your being. No content, but peace. That's where your peace lives. I mean, real, experiential. And then within that, there's a fire called life that is a solar energy fraction. And its nature is unconditional love for the body. So here you are, if you want to feel love, you need to get in touch with yourself because you're it and it's already there, right? And then out of that comes the shine of that into the world is called, I call it inspired purpose. And then you got the physical body, food and fitness, basically, and detox and rest and activity and all of that. And then outside of that is survival smarts. That's the protective mind. That's based on courage and skills. And then there's a social part, and then there's the natural environment part, and then there's the big picture. So 8 parts, each one has a different nature and a different function, needs a different kind of attention, goes off in a different way and responds to a different kind of intervention. So what I'm working on is basically turning total health into a teachable field based in nature and human nature, and turning human nature into a teachable field, because everything that's wrong with the world comes from neglecting one of those issues, and the primary ones are all the inner human issues, because our senses take us out, and we don't make effort to bring our focus back into our own nature, where the peace and the love reside. Is that what I told you?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Setting higher goals that you can aspire towards, so that you can reach a deeper, meaningful peace and understanding.
Right. Right. Yeah, because honestly, we could all live, like, if you look at the people who had the best life on this planet, I would say they were the wise people. They might have been the teachers, like the masters. You know why? Because they actually spent time with themselves, getting present in their own space, getting present in their own nature, and discovering the peace, the love, the wisdom, the fulfillment, the contentment, the inspiration that's there. And then they shared that with people. And 8 billion people could live like those masters, because we all have the same nature. Except they took it seriously, and we sort of dabble in it mostly.
They lived the inner peace because they were teaching and they were following what was truth, but outwardly they were subject to atrocity, and every master you can think of in some way was slain and killed, and empires rose against them, and governments denied them, and so on, and the previous but for sure it's that setting higher goals is one of the things that's I would love to see you put this in a book, in a online class that you can teach it and you can spread it.
I will. I'm in the process. I'm a work in progress, and that's a work in progress too. Yeah, because it's true. The masters had challenges, but when you say that, it's like, don't you have challenges? I have challenges too. The people who are not masters have challenges too. Some of them get killed by governments too. Do you know what I mean? Some of them, somebody walks down the street and runs, or you're driving down the road and somebody goes on, runs into your car. Everybody's got challenges. Absolutely. And every body eventually gets crucified by something
in its own way.
So so since we're all going to die one day, why don't we, instead of trying to survive, which is a fool's errand, because you're not going to survive eventually, right? So instead of surviving, why don't we shoot for thriving, and then thrive until we check out? We're going to check out anyway, right? You might as well.
Check out peacefully, knowing that you did that.
Yeah, check out like blown away, right? Because life when you actually set that standard and you get to that standard, you failed your way to success, because you set the standard, you don't immediately embody it. So you say, okay, well, I set the standard. I'm going to set the standard. I'm committed to the standard. I will never not commit to that standard. Okay, so you screw up. You say, okay, what happened? You learn something. Go after the standard again. You screw up again. You learn something again. Go after the standard again. Why not? Why not?
Absolutely.
That's how you get good at anything, right? It's not any different from learning carpentry. You bent the nail, man. Right? Boom.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
So then you learn, and so you get better at it. Well, why don't we do that with being human?
absolutely. Talking about challenges, let's talk about challenges of harvest. Brendan, who was here with us, I don't know, did you meet Brendan when you were in Merritt?
We walked by each other.
Yeah, just
it was the end
briefly.
of the harvest day, so I was
Yeah.
a bit incapacitated.
Yeah, we're all a bit incapacitated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear a story from Brendan about harvest. The challenges. Let's talk. The topic being challenges and setting higher standards. Let me
There you go.
give Brendan the floor to give us a little bit of a story about challenges of picking pine pollen.
Oh man. One of my blog posts is gonna have this story in it. I look at harvesting from I have Métis heritage, so from an Indigenous heritage, as really just a spiritual discipline. And because there's such a short window, and we were very, very blessed this year with temperatures that I believe it was the longest ponderosa harvesting season we've ever had. But depending on the elevation and the areas you're in, you maybe have 4 or 5 days to get to these trees, which means there's not a lot of days off. You're going very, very hard for a very short time period. And I think the pretty typical rotation for most people, and this was myself, is you're generally doing 10 days on, 1 day off. And I think it was my 10th day, I had decided that I was just going to do a half day. Maria and one of the other harvesters we had, Nani, came out and ended up doing some filming with me and a little bit of educational stuff. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I've got 3 more hours, then I can just take the day off. And I had stumbled upon this beautiful piece of ranch land that I had access to just by myself for probably about 4 or 5 days. And it was kind of going to be that last day I was there. And as it happens, every time you walk to a tree and you harvest and you have to take the stuff back to your vehicle, you try and go a different way because it's crazy. I mean, you can be on one side of a tree and see nothing. You walk to the other side and you'll see something completely loaded. And you follow your curiosity sometimes and you'll say, well, it looks like maybe there's something over there. And, right before I was going to kind of turn it in, I found what I would characterize as the perfect tree. Some of the ponderosas, they're very interesting. They might have like stiff branches, and some of them just on their phenotype, they have kind of these dangly long vine branches. And so I walk upon this tree that's got to be 50, 60 feet high, 360 degrees.
Wow.
Absolutely loaded with catechins that are about the size of baseballs. Perfect ripeness, meaning that I could go like this and they would come right off the crown without any damage. And the branches were such that I could duck and weave and move them around without any damage to the tree. The ground around this tree was almost perfectly level in a natural environment. And so this is the first year that we started using ladder access. So that meant that I could get my ladder around the entire tree, and with it being able to move the branches was also very easy. And so I'm describing all this, but my mental state was one of jubilation and one of just dread. I was like, this is going to take me 3 hours on this tree. and it's going to be great. You know, we're going to get a lot of great product. I'm going to make money ethically. I can't walk away from this. This is just beautiful. But I was empty inside. And me and a few of the other harvesters, some of the younger ones, there's this quote from a dude named David Goggins. It's kind of a Navy SEALs thing. It's like, who's going to carry the boats? You know, when you're tired and you don't want to be in the surf anymore, you know, who's going to carry the boats? Who's going to help? And then there's a mantra from one of my favorite songs, and it goes, do the work. I know it hurts, but you have to. And even just from an indigenous perspective, you know, the bison are the only animals that run into the storm because they know if you go into the storm, you're going to get through it quicker. And this is like maybe one of the only times I ever did this, but I threw on my pump up playlist and just for the next 3 hours tried to throw myself into that energy and that blessing of being able to harvest from that tree.
Wow.
And on the way from that tree, I found another one. and at this point, there were expletives coming out of me, in between laughs and smiles. You know, if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, and there's that one scene where Lieutenant Dan's just up in the crow's nest laughing through the storm. That's about the point at which my mental and physical state were at. And at the end of that day, I had pushed myself to my absolute physical boundaries. I really couldn't go much further. And I just found a spot to try and meditate and sit down and really embody some gratitude for the blessing that that piece of land had given me and just the trees that I'd found that day. And, you know, I sat down and the floodgates opened. I mean, that's one of the beautiful spiritual things about harvesting is when you're out in nature and when you give yourself that much, it allows catharsis, it allows release for a lot. And so that was a very, very beautiful experience, beautiful challenge, I would say. I've got a tattoo on my chest. It's Latin, Ardua per Bellus, which is adversity through beauty. And that was one of the gifts and opportunities that was given to me. And I'm sure in many other ways was given to a lot of others. People pushed themselves very, very hard to ensure that, you know, they made as much money as possible, but also that the company was getting the highest quality product they could as well.
Yeah. I'm speechless to thank you for sharing that, because that's that connection to the land that you bring in at the end. That's really what reaching up to that higher level is. You know, you can't, like, in some ways, just being on the land and sitting with it, which is sitting with yourself, is one of the and going deeper into it. That's amazing. That's good on you. Good on you. Did you harvest the second tree as well?
I did.
You did.
It's one of these things. I mean, so in striving for right relations and just ethical harvesting practices, you know, when something like that is offered to you, I this is my belief. I wouldn't put it on anybody else, but I believe there's an ethical responsibility to utilize that gift that's being given. And you know, one of the beautiful parts about the way we harvest is, in reality, we're maybe getting 5 to 10% of what that tree can yield. And by harvesting them properly, you are essentially giving the tree a little bit of a pruning or a little bit of a haircut, which is going to allow future growth for seasons to come, which is just more beneficial for the overall ecosystem. So yeah, that last tree. Oh, much as
good on you. Good on you. We're gonna reward you with I would say we should reward you with a year's supply of pine pollen for just sharing that story with us. You know, you bring up a really good point in that, in terms of the ethical aspects of the harvest and when that gift is being offered, and you know how precious that is, to be there with that intention. Because we are definitely missing our connection with the land, connection with even the ponderosa trees, in particular. The story going about ponderosas. We have, you know, in our years of putting rubber to gravel roads, we have come across a lot of ranch lands that are cutting down their ponderosas, considering them more of a nuisance and especially for some of them, it's more of a concern for cougars. That's or cats that would be like they blame it on that. I don't know. It's that's what we heard. It's like there's cats in this area. And we don't want them to be jumping on us, but they're cutting them, and we know when we don't have this is historical from loss of species and whatnot. When species don't have a food value for us, or a commercial value like lumber as lodgepole has, they start going neglected. And Ponderosa stands are one of the most beautiful stands, I think in Canadian landscape. Just being witness to those, especially high up in grounds. And I don't know if the Merritt area is that where you found this, or in somewhere else, but I've seen a couple of areas where I just want to sit there and I just want to hold that beauty. But when you're on the go, you got to harvest. You the hard work and the beauty together. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
I have a photo of Brendan on that day. Luckily, I got to see Brendan right before that. And I'll just share. This is Brendan on his ladder. And I had never seen the pickers use ladders. And this year they used the cherry picking ladders. And he is quite high.
That is an amazing picture.
This tree is big.
A tree is big, and the other side of it is the side that might take 3 hours to harvest. This side has got higher branches, so wow.
Yeah. So this was I guess probably around 1 or 2, and Brendan was like, yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up after this. And then I didn't see him till probably 8 or 9 o'clock that night. And I'm like, I thought you were coming back. What happened? Thanks for sharing, Brendan.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And it was really great because I work with a lot of the ambassadors, and Brendan and I started chatting a few years ago because he was really passionate about pine pollen and Canadian pine pollen specifically, and he wanted to promote it. And then he had said that he'd been tree planting, and he came on some of our community conversations, and we just started talking about, why don't you come out and harvest with us if you have some experience and a passion for pine pollen? And he came out and we got to meet. So it was really special. So we'll just transition now to any questions for Udo. Oh, Udo, you never got to share about your oil. Can we hear a little bit more about your oil? If you want to share. Oh, and you're muted right now here.
Okay. Well, I think more health problems come from damaged oils than any other part of nutrition, because they're the most sensitive of our nutrients, and they need the most care because light, oxygen, and heat damage them. Well, we give them the least care. We throw them in frying pans, right? And when you fry them, I mean, we've done the numbers. When you have a tablespoon of an oil that is made the way industry makes oils, it's about 0.5 to 1% damaged. So how many damaged molecules do you think you might find in that tablespoon?
Yeah, the seed oils are definitely, especially when they're heated, they're a problem. That's definitely a good soundbite on the oils. And I think Udo is humble enough not to talk about his own brand on our show, so we'll leave it to that. But any questions for Udo or myself on the topic of pine needles?
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about what you guys are doing too is that you don't clear cut the forest to get your pollen, right?
Oh,
so you're taking a part of the pollen, you're not hurting the tree, and you're not damaging damaging the source of your livelihood, right?
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
It's safeguarding the trees. I think the more awareness that gets out with the fact that it's a source of food as a species, it has a better chance to survive. Of in itself, the effort that goes into making it a food is really the energy that comes through the food itself. Pine pollen or pine needle, it doesn't matter. Pine needles are just as hard to get when they're in the season. They have a higher vitamin C in the winter, and so getting them is, you know, like you're treading the snow, and it's definitely and picking them is not as easy. It's almost easier to harvest a tree or go in after tree cutters and harvest the needles off the ground and picking them. It's the effort that goes into it shows up in, and that's, you know, like there was a spruce drinks in the past that's, you know, that carried its traditional knowledge into the industry, but the effort that goes into getting it is made it more of a spruce flavor now, and left it at that, right? So with Health Canada, when we got our NPN, I got a story on that. With NPN, I had it listed for children, our Evergreen C. So I had a dosage range for children and adults on our vitamin C from pine needles and pine spruce tips. They wanted evidence of dosing in children, and there was only one evidence in a newspaper that children would be going around gathering the pine needles, and then they would be brewing them into teas, and it wouldn't mention how many grams or how much of the pine needle and whatnot. So on that, they denied children's dosing and left it to adults. One question I have for anyone that's tasted our pine needle Evergreen C. The sweetness that comes in there is currently glycerine, and we have thought about changing it to honey. What's the main thing with that is that it would increase the alcohol content for preservative, because when you dilute honey in water, it's not as well of a preservative. Let's have a show of hands. Like, how would you be in favor of some honey, but a lot more alcohol in there, as far as tasting and whatnot goes?
Depends on how my day's gone, how much alcohol I want.
Yeah. That's a big barrier with tinctures, right? Especially if you're taking pine pollen, pine needle, mushrooms. You know, there's a limit to how much alcohol you can take.
Yeah. I would probably stick with the glycerin. Me personally.
Yeah.
Because then you take that, and then you have another, and you create a problem, and then you got to fix that problem, and you know, sometimes it just gets more complicated.
That's true.
Yeah.
From regulatory perspective, it's just keep it as is.
That too, yeah.
And a lot of our customers who are vegan, and they don't like the honey.
Right, that's true.
Oh,
that's good for glycerin.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
I'll share the slide in case anyone is not familiar with Evergreen C.
Yeah.
This is the bottle. It's really beautiful product to be using. I use it mainly in winter, cold and flu season. And I think to use this more in the winter, but as I was doing the research for the email newsletter last week, I was surprised how important vitamin C is for summer.
Yeah, the more sun exposure, you're getting more oxidative damage, so you need more antioxidants.
Yeah, so I'm going to be using this all year round now, and not just think it's something for the fall winter season.
Yeah, actually, all of the sources of vitamin C grow most in summer, don't they? All your salads and all of that. So that might be a hint. I use a tincture. I use it winter and summer. I do it every day. You know, I have my supplements that I take. I have it with my supplements. I take it every day.
That's
And,
awesome.
And sometimes I take one squirt, and sometimes I take 2 or 3 or 4 because
Yeah.
I love the taste of it.
I try to limit. I take it in now. I used to take it in water. Now I've started adding it to non-alcoholic beer. Especially on the days in the summer when I sweat, I sometimes crave beer, but I don't do alcohol. So I get a non-alcoholic beer and put a few squirts of the tincture in there, and it gives it that spruce kick, and it's my taste. But I don't do it often because even with non-alcoholic beer, the amount of yeast you're enters and the estrogens, the xenoestrogen, is not worth the consequences, right? I had a call coming in which I had to cancel, and I was, take that later. My battery is running out.
So we did receive a question from someone who couldn't make the live call. So I just wanted to ask it for them. And their question is, what's the best supplement for arthritis? And is pine needle supplementation good for inflammation due to degenerative diseases?
Pine pollen tincture would be better for that, because degenerative diseases are aging problems. And aging is often associated with lack of the hormones that are growth citing, whether it's growth hormone, whether it's testosterone, whether anything that's anabolic. And there is a human trial on pine pollen and arthritis, showing that it reduces inflammation and the pain measures that comes. The pine pollen would be a better choice for arthritis.
Thank you.
Cool.
Saeid, are there any studies on the cardiovascular impacts? I found myself doing a lot more Wingate sprints on my bike lately, and I've been taking the chaga and the Evergreen C tincture pretty consistently and feel like they're impacting that.
Right. Are you taking pine pollen also, or just Evergreen and chaga?
I am doing reishi, chaga, pine pollen, and Evergreen C pretty much every day.
Okay. Yeah. So the arginine from the pine needles will give you improved cardiovascular activity. The pine pollen itself has a cardiovascular human trial as well that shows improves blood pressure, which means that it has a regulatory effect on your cardiovascular system. So yeah, I think the combination would do that. And reishi also has some cardiovascular impact as well. Reishi is another adaptation. It exerts that more through regulating your nervous system and your cardiovascular system. So you would be getting a lot of that extra boost you're getting it from pine pollen. That is like the key ingredient in that mix. The pine needles is just upper respiratory. Like it definitely does, like it gives you some of the resins and like the pycnogenol branded pine antioxidant type of molecules. But it hits you in your lungs, and the bark, which is pycnogenol or proanthocyanidins, hits you everywhere as an antioxidant. The pollen itself is sparking your gin, your capacity to transfer what you have into energy, to increase your chi and your ability to sustain. it is the single ingredient in that offering. But the other ones, pine needles, there's not. I wouldn't say there is anything else like that in the market that offers you that vitamin C from a traditional source that is also a medicine of the people for helping with upper respiratory tract infections. And chaga, of course, is one of the most traditional kind of, the use goes all across, the northern boreal forest. Is a wonderful thing to have. I do my chaga like the old school way, like brewing it like 7, 8, 9 times on the stove, getting everything out of the chunks, and then not wasting it at that level either, and then grinding it and brewing it a couple more times. But it's a lot of work to get that chaga, so yeah.
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone for showing up this week for our conversation, and thanks Udo for being our guest today. Thanks for sharing
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, your experience with the Evergreen C. And I'll stay on the call a little longer if anyone has any other questions. And next week we have a guest, Caitlin Bjog, and she is a herbalist, and she is loving using our pine pollen and mushroom tinctures. And she's going to come on the call to talk about healing from burnout using natural products. So Dr. Saeid and Caitlin will be having a great conversation next week. If you can join us for the live, that would be great. If not, all of these videos are always on our YouTube channel for you to revisit. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you again next week.
I just wanted to say one thing. This is Dina in Florida.
Hi, Dina.
I am the Flora rep. So in Florida and Puerto Rico. So I represent Udo's oil, and I have since 2015. And it's one of my favorite products. And I've been trained by Udo when I worked in the health food store. So it's very fascinating to see him still, as he would say, thriving instead of surviving. So I have a whole bunch of hearts flying all over the place for you.
Hi, Dina. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, I'm your rep in Florida.
I pressed the heart button for you, Dina.
Thank you. I saw it.
Here we go.
Love for Udo. And I watched that documentary that you were in, Udo. And
Which,
the clip with Tony Robbins.
Eating Our Way to Extinction?
Yeah. That's great.
I got my 21 seconds of great fame. 21 seconds.
Well, Tony Robbins' testimonial about the toxicity of fish and how he went from being vegan to eating fish and vegetables, and then how toxic that was for his body. So that was fascinating to hear.
Tony's promoted my oil for 20 years. Yeah, he's my best promoter. He's better than I am.
Maybe he needs some pine pollen.
If I have a chance to talk to him, I will give him a bottle.
Give him a bottle. You know, he is married to a girl from Langley.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should be able to find him somewhere.
That's how I met him, because she was friends with my son, who's a fitness trainer.
Oh, right.
And she's a naturopath by training. She then invited him to date with Destiny, and then he came and said to me, "Oh, you got to see this Tony guy." I said, "Yeah, I know Tony. He's got big teeth and he's on infomercials." He said, "No, Dad, it's different." So I said, "How's it different?" He said, "I can't tell you. You got to see him." So in my head, I'm going, "Well, if you can't explain it to me, I'm not going." So then he had Tony invite me through Sage, invite me to talk to his group. That's how we got connected. Through the Langley girl.
That's really cool.
Such a small.
Small world. We're so connected.
I'm surprised, Dina. I know the name. I knew the name. I was like, I didn't know. Cool. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Small world.
And we are also the Canadian Pine Pollen Company's newer representative in Florida now. So it's a great combination and a great marriage, and it's lovely to hear how it all is intertwined. So thank you all for that.
That's a great confirmation, Dina.
Yes.
Thanks for
Very cool.
showing up again, Dina.
Absolutely.
Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah, and Christina, thanks for being here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know give you any time to chat, but it's thanks for being here.
We'll see you again. Thanks,
Thanks.
Udo.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Christina. Do you have any updates for us this week? How are you
I,
feeling?
I received my pine
Your
pollen.
bucket.
Yeah.
Do you know on the call today, Saeed, 2 people are bucket users.
Oh, that's awesome.
Udo, do you know you can buy a year's supply, a 1 kg bucket of pine pollen?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
You can do that, Udo, and we'll make a special deal for you.
Okay, let me send me what I need to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will look at it.
Perfect.
I love your stuff, guys.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. And you, like I said, you're a visionary. You saw the product, you realized it was a good thing. You know.
Yeah.
Thanks for realizing that.
Yeah, it has something to do with the people who are doing it too.
Cheers.
So don't leave yourself out.
Thank you.
All right.
That's
Bye.
the magic, I tell everyone.
Yeah. Yep.
Bye.
Bye, Udo.